You're listening to a special presentation from Night of the Living podcast, Zoned Out, the Twilight Zone, revisited with Joe and Freddy. What's up, Joe?
Hey, Freddy, how you doing?
I'm good. We're back on the nostalgia bent this week.
We're back in the what? Sorry, one more time.
The nostalgia bent.
Oh, yeah.
For some nostalgia.
Yes.
Not that, it's inherently nostalgic to watch these episodes, but the theme of nostalgia has come back.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Nostalgia, it's one of those, it's a reoccurring. It comes back here and there. And I think this is actually kind of an interesting, it was kind of I don't know, like first it was one of those where I'm like, it's pretty boring. It's kind of like this and that, and you start thinking about what's actually happening. And then I watched it again. This is where I feel like watching these a couple of times is really helpful because it's on the second viewing, or even in this case, the third viewing of Static, where I was like, oh, there's actually a whole lot of like foreshadowing and there's subtlety in here that you don't see until another viewing that I didn't pick up on the first time. So
some of the best performances too. The two
really
leads
good.
are fantastic. So we're talking Static. I don't know if I even said the title yet, but Static. Originally aired March 10th, 1961. This is the third of 9 episodes directed by Buzz Kulik. If you want to know more about him, listen to our King 9 Will Not Return podcast. Written by Charles Beaumont, based on a short story by O.C. Rich, what I think is really interesting because Charles Beaumont is usually the one writing the short story that is being adapted by Rod Serling or whomever. But in this case, he was adapting O.C. Rich's story. The original author wasn't credited in Dead Man's Shoes, but they also wrote the story that episode's based on, which we'll get to in the future. Yeah. This was the 5th episode shot on tape. The setting is a boarding house with at least 7 residents that I counted. Boarding houses now, I don't know. Is that still even a thing? I have no idea.
That's exactly what I was thinking going into this. I was like, do they still do that? Like, I imagine, yeah. I mean, I don't think they're as common because we just call most of that like an apartment or something, but it seems like you're renting a room. I don't know.
Yeah. A boarding house, like for those who don't know, it's like living in a home, not in a, like Joe was saying, like an apartment, but it's not, it's really, you're in a house in one room, you're sharing meals. Like whoever runs it is usually feeding you. It's like a staple in a lot of early Stephen King stories too. Like Salem's Lot, for instance, the writer Ben Mears lives in a boarding house. And I think I have a romanticized idea of it, but now it might even be like a group home now. You know what I mean? It's for people that, need to live with other people.
And there's like a halfway houses and stuff like that. But I don't know if that kind of took the place of boarding houses or if it's not as common because houses are different now. Like they're not as quite big that you'd be able to host, 7 people, 8 people in the house.
Yeah, it might have just been like a natural evolution of having a big house and then the world changing and trying to keep it and turning it into a business. Like that makes sense. But in the 60s, at least in this story, like these aren't people who are out of prison or seem to be suffering from any type of crisis where they have to live there. It's just where they live. Some of them are, I think most of them are people who stayed single and became elderly bachelors and spinsters, as they used to call ladies. And I wonder if I would like to think there's still an option like this for people out there. I should have done a little research just so I would know. But
I just started typing into a browser to be like, what is a boarding house? What is the common?
What happened to boarding houses? So we have a cast of 16, 9 are credited. Like I said, 7 of those are people living in the boarding house. The other 2 are the little boy who helps him move the radio and the shop owner of the junk shop. There's some uncredited roles, including the people who appear on TV and in the radio broadcasts as well. I will say in the radio the TV broadcast that everybody's watching, that's Jerry Fuller is the singer on TV. I don't know if you remember him. The song "Young Girl." I didn't know he also wrote "Traveling Man." He wrote "Traveling Man" and "Young Girl." "Young Girl's"
Wait,
super creepy in hindsight.
I thought Gary Puckett sang "Young Girl" or wrote "Young Girl."
He sang. I think he covered it or sang it, but Jerry Fuller wrote
really?
it. Yeah, he wrote over 1,000 songs. Jerry Butler, and like I got this list. I think I got this from IMDb. Reba McEntire, Gene Vincent, Cher, Glenn Campbell, Ray Price, Don McLean, Sam Cooke. Like this huge Ray Charles. This huge list of people who've recorded songs by Jerry Fuller. He's actually the one singing on the TV there. The guy who wrote all those songs.
Interesting. I got to tell you a story too. I'm sorry, this is a total divergent digression, but
No worries.
my ex-wife told a story when she was younger. She used to be into all the older music, the kind of rock and 50s kind of type music, and she went and saw Gary Puckett and the Union Gap perform at the State Fair, and she was so excited as a teenager that at one point she yelled out, "I'm your young girl, Gary!"
Oh, that song is so creepy.
Has gone down in infamy in that family. So I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning that. But
people our age probably, you heard that song a lot because the oldies station. Our parents, most like children of the 80s and 70s, their parents listened to the oldies station, and the oldies were stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you'd hear that song "Young Girl" 1,000 times.
Young girl, get out of my mind. Yeah.
My love for you is way out of line because you're young girl, much too young girl.
That's terrible.
How young? Because at the time, like, people were unapologetically like rock stars like Little Richard and Chuck Berry and all these bands were singing about like girls that were like 13 and 14 years old.
Yeah. Well, and Jerry Lee Lewis married his 14-year-old cousin or something.
Yeah. So with all the current events, it really feels even creepier, because it's all in the front of your mind right now, where normally you wouldn't, if you weren't like, you probably were innocently not thinking of a lot of that,
So let's set that aside, and I'll just note that I did look up boarding houses apparently are less common because of zoning changes and the rise of alternative housing like self-catering apartments. So
self-catering apartments. It sounds nice enough. I wonder if the reality is even close. So we covered Jerry Fuller, another person who was uncredited but went on to become a pretty big star and a controversial figure. Bob Crane is the voice of the disc jockey. Yeah. And this was the first time he appeared on TV. But if you know Hogan's Heroes, another syndicated show people our age watched, and of course people at the time when it aired, it was a big deal. He was famous for being the lead on that show, but then later it turned out he was part of this kind of underground sex tape ring that all these men were making, like 8mm sex tapes. And he was at the heart of that, and it was a big story. So if you're curious about the dirty underbelly of Hollywood, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So to get into the main players, we have Ed Lindsay. He's a bitter aging bachelor, played by Dean Jagger, who's from Lima, Ohio. He was a teacher, then he became an actor. He won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in 12 O'Clock High. And he was the Major General, I'm getting tongue-tied here, in White Christmas. So he's the sweet old guy they're always talking about in White Christmas.
Oh, yeah. He's a model of a modern Major General.
Close enough. He was Mormon. He had a lisp, but it never. Oh, these are two separate things. Mormon one, lisp second, and the lisp when he would go on to act, it just disappeared. So when he was in character, he could get rid of it somehow. I don't know.
Interesting.
That's true with singing with some people too, who have
or accents, how they changed.
Yeah.
Though I think honestly, it's really subtle, but I think accents, because of the way you move your mouth, does change your singing some.
Definitely.
There's like a vibe to it. Yeah.
There's a little bit of a vibe. I can usually tell when it's an English singer. So he has a great line in this to the boys helping him move the radio. It says, "Go buy yourself a switchblade."
Yeah. I'm actually quoted that out here at one point. It's really funny.
I was just like, that struck me. I was like, this guy does not give a fuck. He just wants to get rid of this kid. Also, he had another. There's the real telling line. You know, Joe, you know probably what I'm talking about when they're bringing the old
Yeah.
radio up from the
Yep.
basement. Yeah,
Yep. I'll get that one out too.
yeah. You can go ahead and say it. I just wanted
Oh, okay.
to assign it to the character real quick. Yeah.
He just says one moment at one point, there's a woman who reminisces about this radio he bought up from the basement, and we'll get to that, but he basically kind of looks at her in the side eye and says, I never throw away anything that's worth keeping.
It's a great line because when you get to the end, it really does pay off what he meant,
Yeah,
what he
yeah.
truly meant. We have the little boy, Stephen Talbot, who's going to come back in The Fugitive. I can't remember what season in the future. He was Gilbert on Leave It to Beaver. If anybody watched Leave It to Beaver, he's now a documentary filmmaker. He did a whole PBS biography of Dashiell Hammett, the mystery writer, and he won a special Edgar Allan Poe award for that from the Mystery Writers of America. So if you're into that, you could probably still find that on YouTube, I would think, or on PBS's website. So he's the son of Lyle Talbot, who, that might ring a bell if you're a classic movie fan. He was a pre-Code Warner Brothers player. He was in Plan 9 from Outer Space later in his career.
Nice.
And Amazon Women on the Moon. He has a great just story all around. Someone, I can't even get into the tip of the iceberg about Lyle Talbot, the father of this kid. But you should definitely look it up if you're into film history. He's had a wild career. Vinny is this beautiful, like 60-ish year old woman who runs the boarding house. And at one point she was supposed to marry Ed, our lead, which is a real sad little bit of trivia that they've been living together like this, even though they were meant to be together as a couple.
Which is interesting. Yeah, you don't get that at the beginning. So like some of the stuff that you see early on, which I'll point out, is it foreshadows that.
Yeah. Carmen Matthews played that role. She was in Butterfield 8, A Rage to Live, Sounder, and Daniel. Those are all things I've never seen. But that's what she's known for. So I only know her from this.
Yeah.
She was also, oh no, I take that back. She was on MASH. I did know her from MASH.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then she has that line that really ties in with what Ed said about the radio. She says, "We had our chance and missed it, Ed," which is another sad little aside. Professor Ackerman, who's another boarder, and maybe Ed's only real friend in the house.
Yeah.
Robert Christian Emhart. He was from Indianapolis and went to Butler University and the London Academy of Dramatic Arts. So he, furthered and broadened his education. He was very successful in television, film, theater, all across the board. He won Critics Circle Award. He was also really active in his church and Boy Scouts of America, which I thought was kind of interesting. He was in 3:10 to Yuma and one of my favorite trashy horror movies, It's Alive, the evil baby movie. Roscoe Bragg, this character is another boarder, and he's for what Professor Ackerman is to Ed, Roscoe is the opposite. He's kind of a prick to him the entire time. We see them interacting.
He kind of remind me of Henry Rollins a little bit.
Yeah,
he had that kind of rough look,
He looked angry all the time. This is the first of 3 appearances from Arch Johnson. He's going to come back real soon in Long Distance Call. And then he also comes up in Showdown with Rance McGrew. This feller was also a stage actor who went into television, but on stage, he was in West Side Story, Other People's Money. I think the main thing people our age will probably know him from is The Sting, which was a hugely successful movie. Played Combs in that. Mrs. Nielsen, she's the one, great comedic actress. She's the one who says he's gone completely psychological. Alice Pierce.
Great line.
Yeah, and you probably would recognize, again, these very familiar faces if you watch syndicated television in the 80s. She was on Bewitched. She was I don't know if she was like the neighbor. Yeah, I guess she was their neighbor, Gladys. And she would always be the person who was like nonplussed and trying to figure out what was going on with all the, Samantha's magic and such.
Yeah.
Real interesting look. But yeah, she got ovarian cancer and then hid it and kept working on Bewitched until she just died. And you can kind of see
Oh,
her decline on the show too. She gets thinner and thinner and everything.
wow.
Yeah. But she was a trooper, man. She was only 48. You would never guess she was only 48 years old if you watched like the last bits of her appearances on Bewitched. You would think she was in her 70s.
What's interesting too is some of these characters, their faces are so distinct
Yeah.
that when you see them, you recognize them just because. And it's funny because a lot of these faces, and this ties into some of the things that will happen in the episode too of him listening to even older shows, is that some of these faces you'll see kind of reappear in future media, calling back to this time because it's kind of reminiscent of, oh, well, we need a woman who's kind of that like that look, of the boarding house mom,
Yeah.
And so you see that stuff in like cartoons and stuff later where it's referencing an older time, but these are the people that are like, oh, imagine somebody who looks kind of like this. And I think what happens is people call back to those memories of like people like her face where you're like, oh, it's kind of round and momish and kind of, that kind of appearance.
This era influenced so many, like you were saying, like cartoonists and animators and all that, where they would design characters. And that's true. We were just covering. Now you're hearing this. We record in advance, so you're hearing this further on. But in the Night of the Living podcast, we were doing Badfingers, which were evil hand movies. And doing that theme, you learn that like that's what got Charles Adams to create Thing, was that he saw the Beast with Five Fingers and then implemented that. And like all those the Peter Lorre cartoons and all that stuff. These characters, like you're saying, it just the look of. These were the standard, these golden age of Hollywood film and TV actors. Yeah, you're absolutely dead on the money. And
there's a great tie-in that I'll bring up later with Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes, which we'll get to.
We have the shopkeeper. This guy, very small appearance by Clegg Hoyt, but the reason I even mentioned him is because he's going to come back in the Bard. But he also had an interesting bit of trivia about him. He was friends with Jack Nicholson, and in Batman, where Jack Nicholson goes to Vicky Vale's apartment, he does that thing where he does the raspberry and dances around,
Mm-hmm.
That was this Clegg Hoyt's thing he would do, and that was a tribute to him because they were good friends. I thought it was cute and fun.
That's cute.
Miss Meredith. This character is just kind of there to be another one to be astounded at what's happening. But Lillian O'Malley, I'll just leave it there. She was famous for Westerns and stuff. Mr. Llewellyn, again, just another body really in the episode. But he does have two other appearances that we've already covered, Walking Distance and Back There. So if you want to know about Pat O'Malley, the actor who played Mr. Llewellyn, just listen to the Walking Distance podcast. Disc jockey we already covered. That was Bob Crane. And then just again, another treatise on nostalgia and regret. Very romantic, bittersweet episode. Do you want to get into the meat of the story, Joe?
Yeah, I'll mention the last thing I'll mention about the people, especially around the table there. There's one scene where they're kind of gathered around the table. There's another scene when they're gathered around the TV. And there's a moment when there's a conversation in the in the kitchen around the table where you hear somebody chuckle, and it's not somebody who's displayed on the screen. And I think they're responding to something else that somebody said, but it kind of gives it more of like a, I don't know, like a more modern feel because it's video and you're hearing that.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel quite as like polished, and it has a little more informal feel to it. I just thought that was kind of cool. When you talk about those background characters lending to the atmosphere. So,
well, yeah, there's a lot in the Blu-ray extras too that kind of establish that being shot on video, that it was shot, I think, chronologically, and also those things where you can hear noises and shit that you wouldn't normally hear because the sound was rolled separate on film. And they could snip that stuff out. But yeah, it's come a long way. Video production.
Nice.
Today, I mean, like, look at this old thing. Yeah, you could hear every creak and everything in the set. All right, man. So you want to get into the story?
Let's do it.
All right.
All right. So we start out as it being a video episode. And we are shown the exterior of a boarding house that has rooms for rent. So they kind of toss that in right off the bat. And like Freddie said, there's a group of about 7 people or so gathered around watching TV, an old black and white television, and everyone's intently watching a Western, and they kind of pan over people's faces. And
You mean a new black and white television?
What's that?
I said, you mean a new black and white television?
Yeah, right. Yep, brand new black and white television. And everybody's just glued to it, like not taking their eyes away. There's some of them are doing stuff with their hands, which, you see in the old TV shows like this where people are knitting or whatever with their hands, but everybody's just can't take their eyes off of it. And except for Ed, excuse me, who's trying to play checkers with the professor, who's clearly a professor because he's heavy set with glasses and a pipe. And he's Ed is the professor is very distracted by the TV, and Ed's just getting more and more pissed off because everyone's watching TV, and at one point he has to remind the professor, "No, you moved the wrong piece. I'm the other color. You're the other color." And finally he makes his move, and he's like, "Down, down, down, down." He jumps like 3 times and then just picks up all the pieces and throws them.
Of all games to be struggling with, maybe you need to see a doctor. If you can't handle music playing at the same time as a game of checkers happening.
He's like, would you pay attention to this game of checkers? He's so pissed off. So he gets up and increasingly agitated, goes over to the TV, and he starts kind of ranting at it. And people are like, shh, quiet, they're trying to watch. And they're like, you can request changing the channel if you want. And he just walks up and he starts... first he changes the channel to first they're watching a Western, and then he changes the channel to a chlorophyll cigarette ad, which apparently was like a fad in the 50s. I didn't realize that. Like chlorophyll was everywhere.
I didn't catch that. It was a chlorophyll cigarette thing. So,
yeah, they called it the green cigarette. Huh. Without the smell of tobacco, it's much cleaner because it's green.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and again, that was actually a real fad apparently in the 50s.
You remember clove cigarettes? When I was in high school, those were huge. They were disgusting.
Yeah. And then he switches the channel again, and it's some like dirt racing, like cars with the big, what do they call those spoilers on the top so they don't flip over easier? Roll cage.
I can't remember what those are. Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes. The announcer's talking about Termite Jones, and he goes, "Oh, Termite Jones, my hero, Termite Jones," and he's just being super sarcastic and a huge dick.
I wish I paid closer attention to this TV broadcast now.
Oh, it's great. You gotta go back and watch because he's such a jerk, like narrating it, because everybody else is like, "We're just watching TV, dude. What's your problem?" And he goes, and the announcer's like, "Oh, and he makes it." And he goes, "Oh, he makes it."
Oh, you mean snaps. Ed? I feel so dumb right now. For a minute there, I thought you were saying the announcer said sarcastic shit.
Oh, no.
I gotta come down to earth. Need more coffee. Yeah. It was Ed.
Yeah. Ed's so pissed off at the TV, so he changes the song or changes the channel, and it's like you said, the gentleman singing "Little Brown Jug," and he's being super sarcastic again, Ed is, and he's like, "Oh, it's the prettiest song in the world. Isn't that wonderful? Just ruining it, just completely ruining a beautiful song."
Little Brown Jug's a beautiful song.
Yeah, well, apparently it was by Glenn Miller, I guess, and like it was like a jazz tune or something, I think, and then this guy was playing it like a rock tune, like "Little Brown Jug," hoo, and. Which apparently is Ed's anathema because he just hates rock and roll. He switches it again, and he's mumbling under his breath about this real estate pitch. This guy's trying to sell land, and then he switches again, and it's back to the green commercial, and he's just pissed off and storms out of the room, mumbling after himself. We see him then go downstairs, and in the basement, he finds he's digging around, and he finds a picture of himself and one of the other residents when they were younger. And this is Vinny in this picture, and they're both super happy. They're just beaming in this picture, and he kind of smiles at the photo and then sets it aside. And then he dusts off this old radio. And then a kid who's like looking through the basement window, which isn't a window because there's no glass there. It's just a grate covering a hole in the wall to the outside, apparently. This kid's like, "What you doing, mister?" And he's like, "Well, boy, I'm it's a radio." He's like, "Oh yeah?" And he's like, "Don't you know what a radio is?" He's like, "Well, yeah, but I've never seen one like that." And I don't know, he continually calls him boy, which I'll call back to in a second because I think it's interesting. And again, is one of those subtle things that, well, we'll come back to it. Anyway, we get Mr. Serling's voiceover right after the kid says he's never seen one like this. He goes, "No one ever saw one quite like that because it's a very special sort of radio. In its day, circa 1935, its type was one of the most elegant consoles on the market. Now, with its fabric-covered speakers, its peculiar yellow dial, its serrated knobs, it looks quaint and a little strange. Mr. Ed Lindsay is going to find out how strange very soon when he tunes in to the Twilight Zone."
They're making those kind of consoles again, like the ones that are like 6 feet long with the turntable and everything.
Yeah.
They're like $3,000 to $6,000 depending. Like I just stumbled on an ad for one day on social media. Yeah.
That's nostalgia because who wants that?
I mean, they're gorgeous to look at.
Yeah, they're very pretty. I should say it shouldn't be so glib, but it's like, man, people were trying to get rid of those. It's so funny how that happens where people want to get rid of it and move on to the next thing. And
ones who are like, "Can you help me get rid of this old Ethan Allen wardrobe? It's really cluttering up the place."
Yeah, or it's a piece of furniture that weighs like 6,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're all going to throw these in the dump, you know. So, but when it comes back and he's moving it upstairs, and and apparently he hired the kid to do it because the kid's helping him. And he keeps referring to him as boy, and he's like, "Boy, just move it over there, boy, boy, do this." And he never refers to him by name. And I kept thinking, God, why does this sound familiar? And I was like, it sounds like Kratos from God of War. How like in the more recent the video games.
I never played them, so you have to fill me in.
I never played him either, but I kept seeing there's this reoccurring joke because he always refers to his son as boy, right? So it's like boy. And there's all these meme things with him calling him boy, like 7 minutes long of all the clips. And what's interesting about it is I looked up that Kratos thing just to kind of make sure I had the right reference. And it's interesting because there's a theme to that, in that Kratos refers to his son as boy throughout basically the whole game. And spoiler, he does reveal his name at the end when his impression of the boy changes, but it's kind of showing the distance between them as father and son. And I kind of thought that was an interesting note for Ed, is that showing the distance he has between himself and basically everyone else of a different generation, partially due to the TV, but also like this kid's age, because this kid is, younger. He's showing that distance he has from everyone.
It's relatable. I'm kind of, as I'm aging, like kids, I think kids are great. I have nothing against kids. They're fine. Some are just sweet and adorable, but also there's kind of like this very base level of, I'm like, oh, what sweet kids, have fun, but I don't need to know your names right now.
Yeah.
It's all right. I don't want you just turning up random times of the day.
You kids are great. Go away. Go away now. Don't want you around. I live an adult life. Thank you. So these open them up, and then they pause for a moment to kind of re-get their grip at the bottom of these stairs. And Vinny walks up, and she's just like, just kind of, she gets that smile on her face. She's got a great smile, and this wonderful smile on her face. She's like, oh, she just remembers it fondly. I thought you got rid of this years ago. And he again gives her the side eye and is like, never throw anything away that's worth keeping. Kind of a pause there. And you see her face kind of drop right after, like, oh, like, I wonder if that was that must be something.
Meant for me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't toss you out with the garbage.
Yeah. Or maybe he, again, like most men, doesn't really think about what he's actually saying, how hurtful that is, which we find out later.
I find it, see, I read that almost the reverse of it being like, I think it was like a longing expression for what they had. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where he's like, like why I still live in this boarding house kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I could read it either way. Yeah, totally. So he refers to, pick it up with your legs, boy. Lift with your legs, boy. And they go bring it upstairs. And so when he first turns it on and kind of tunes it in, it's immediately like modern rock music. And the kid does this thing where he does that like, yeah, man. He does squinty eyes and like snapping his fingers like he's going to go dancing.
It's really funny and cute.
It is funny. And he goes, that's pretty wonderful. All right. And snaps his finger. And Ed like very quickly grabs a whatever coin or whatever and sticks it in his hand and kind of hurries him out the door. And he goes, go buy yourself a switchblade.
That shit. The switchblade line, man.
It's so great.
So it really does illustrate how little he really cares about this kid. He's just like, get
exactly. Out. Go be a hooligan like I know you are. With your rock music. So he starts listening to this program and he hears Getting Sentimental Over You by Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra. And then it's going to be followed by Major Bose and his famous amateur hour, The Wheel of Chance or Fate. And round she goes, and where she stops, nobody knows, which they both kind of reminisce, or he and the professor reminisce moments later, but we'll get to that.
Pretty relatable. That's my whole life is reminiscing with other middle-aged people.
Right. And so he goes, so he's listening and kind of fades in and out of static. But as soon as he hears a knocking at the door, the sound kind of fades out. And what you find is as we go along, no one else hears the music. No one else hears what he's hearing. They only hear static. And it's not like he hears it and they don't. It's that every time he tries to show it for them or play it for them, it goes back to static because it goes in and out.
Just like that Looney Tunes frog.
Hello, my baby. Yeah. Hello, my darling. Hello, my ragtime girl.
It only dances for him.
Oh, God. I love those. I love those episodes.
They're real good.
He's tuning it in and he's just enjoying it. And he actually claps out loud. He's like, oh, and listen to that applause for Tommy Dorsey. And he's actually applauding, which, you see somebody really old, they'll do that.
He was giddy.
I've actually seen people do that. Be like, oh yeah, that's the stuff, So the person at the door he opens the door and it's Vinny, who's got that bright smile you see in her photo. And he's actually really rude to her, says he's not hungry. And she's like, well, I just want you to know, the housekeeper, Mrs. Nielsen, doesn't like it, when people, and he's like, all right. Ever since I can remember, women have been running my life. Now do this, do that. Come to dinner. Don't come to dinner. And she right away is just like, frankly, Mr. Lindsay, I don't care whether you starve to death. I just want to make sure that it is on purpose. Not that you've forgotten that food is available.
I missed that Mrs. Nielsen was the housekeeper. I just thought she lived there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think she's like the person who prepares the food. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just was in my imagination. For some reason I was just thinking Vinny was running the whole show, but that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think she just is checking in on Ed, and it's funny because you see her show up over and over again with this like bright, like she's so hopeful of like this possibility, like she's always presenting her best self. And he keeps crapping on her. And eventually she's just like, she's kind of like, why am I trying? So but there's a telling part of that, which we'll come back to later, where he says, women, ever since I can remember, women have been running my life, which I think, that's a common, blah, blah, blah that men say. But there's an interesting point later when we find out that, he didn't get married earlier because his mom was sick And then when she finally passed away, it was too late. So
relatable and realistic scenario. Yeah.
Totally. So he does that, then go downstairs, and he's humming at the table. He's humming the song because he was so fondly remembering it. And the Mrs. Nielsen scolds him for humming at the table, and which is funny. And then they're remembering, like, oh, what was that tune? The professor says, and he goes, oh, it was Getting Sentimental Over You. He said, I just heard Tommy Dorsey, and Major Bose was coming on after. Do you remember those, Professor? And he's like, oh yeah. And this is where Bragg, the other guy, is like, Tommy Dorsey's dead. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like fighting with Ed, and Ed's like, no, I just heard it. And he's like, you didn't hear it. They're both dead, and there wasn't tape back then, so you couldn't have heard them live. And he goes, oh yeah, well, let me go get the radio. Where's that portable radio? And so he storms off. Ed storms off to find the portable radio, and they start talking amongst themselves. And Mrs. Nielsen, the house mom, turns to Miss Brown, Vinny, and says, oh, Miss Brown, you can thank your lucky stars you never married that man. And you see Vinny's face just fall, just like, oh, don't, you don't even, no idea. Anyway, you have no idea what she's been going through to try and make that happen or whatever, Anyway, so he brings back the modern radio, can't tune it in. The other guy makes fun of him. And then Ed calls both Vinny and the professor up to his room. And he's going to play it for him, but he can't find it, and it's only static. And he's like, but I know I heard it. I know I heard it. And he's like, I can't figure it out. And Vinny, again, always positive, coming forward, like, well, she's choosing to believe him. She's like, well, is it impossible that he could have heard it, Professor? And the professor says, I quoted this one out too, because I thought it was kind of interesting. And I think this is a piece that it rang true to me as something Serling would say too. He goes, well, that's a dangerous sort of word to use now, Vinny. We take things for granted today that we called impossible just a few years ago. Let's call it highly unlikely. I thought that was just a cool moment where I was like, interesting.
Yeah. I like the professor kind of enables him a little bit.
Yeah. And then Ed has a confrontation with Vinny. Basically, they've lived in the same boarding house for like 2 decades now, and then they actually met. And Vinny starts talking about how she kind of has to get this out. She's been wanting to say it for a long time, and he keeps kind of interrupting her, but she cuts him off, and she's like, "No, just sit there and listen to me. I'm gonna say this." And it's like clearly something hard that she's been trying to build up to saying. And she relates this kind of history that they had met there, and they fell in love, and they intended to marry, but his mom was sick, and so they decided to wait. Vinny was all ready to set a date, and they waited and they waited and they waited so long till when she died, the mom had died. It was too late. Then too much time had passed, and it was too late.
It's never too late, folks.
Bad. What's that?
It says never too late, folks.
Yep. Never too late. Nope. You gotta make the change now. What's the not to quote Michael Jackson necessarily, but
Man in the Mirror.
Yeah, Man in the Mirror. Gonna make a change. So
he needed to make a real big change.
Yeah. So basically she tells him that the past can't be recovered, and that, he should let it go. And the reason why he's hearing this stuff is that he wants to hear it. It's because getting sentimental, he's like, of course you hear. She's like, of course you hear that when you were around this time. She's like, this time of year is when would have been our anniversary. So all this stuff that she's basically like, let me help you understand. This is what you're going through, which, again, this is like the second or third viewing of this that made me pull this out and kind of go, this is almost an encapsulation of what I think happens to a lot of men, modern men especially, who have been so focused on one thing or another thing, or getting the next thing done in their lives. And I'll count myself deeply in that, where they don't take time for self-examination, and they're not reflecting on, like, what do I really want in my life? What's really important to me? What do I need to exert myself to? What do I need to apply myself to? That's not like a goal, but it's like enriching my life. I don't know. I can't quite put it into good words, but kind of just that stop and take context to your feelings and your emotions and what you want and need in your life, rather than just hitting that next thing you're shooting for. And so she mentions all these things and lays it out for him. And he basically gets mad, which, again, very common response for a lot of men. He gets really angry and he just throws her out of his room because he just doesn't want to accept it. And he just lays down in the bed and he continues listening to the radio. And this is interesting. So then he tunes in and he's listening to a radio show, which has a character that sounds stunningly like Foghorn Leghorn, who's from the Looney Tunes characters, which I found out is directly inspired by Senator Cleghorn, who was like a Southern politician character played by Kenny Delmar on Fred Allen's show in the 40s. And so a lot of the phrases like that, I say, that's a joke, son. That sort of stuff is all tied back to that. So again, this is a character from from this time period, which is going to be the late 50s, early 60s, remembering a character from the 40s, which inspired Looney Tunes in the probably the same kind of era, 50s, 60s, right?
Yeah, and Ed is laughing his ass off at it.
Oh yeah. He's dying. He's rolling, and he goes, "I only eat Georgia crackers," which I'm like, "Oh, is that a cracker line?"
I don't know. I wonder.
That was pretty funny. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty funny. So anyway, he keeps listening to it, and then we clip to later where he's coming back into the house, and he's all excited because he gets to listen to. He can't meet for checkers with the professor, and he doesn't want any lemonade. He's nope. He's very positive, and he's like, I'm just excited because I get to listen to this show and then this show, and then I don't want to miss this show. And he's like, it's funny. I was thinking about this. And I was wondering where the tube was, and I realized it was up here in my head, which just sounds like such an old dude thing to say.
And it's it really feeds the turning point of when they're like, we got to get rid of this thing.
Right. Well, what's interesting is at this point they already have, because he goes, he's musing about the TV being in his head, and he's like, radio is a world that has to be believed to be seen, which is kind of like a seen to be believed joke. And there's like a goofy music sting at that point where the professor and Vinny look at each other, and it's like wah wah blah blah or something. And I was like, what? That seems like weirdly inappropriate at this moment of the show. And then he goes up to his room to find his radio is missing. And he starts freaking out, and he comes down, and they're like, well, we were worried about your mental state, so we got rid of it. And he was like, what? So he finds out that they sent it to the junk man, and he goes to the junk man, he finds it, and immediately just tries to pick it up from the junk man's area and then carry it with him. And then he starts getting a conflict with the junk guy. And anyway, buys it back for $10, takes it back, plugs it in, finds it still operational. And he's like, oh, thank God. And then it kind of pans off of him onto the radio. This is kind of an interesting bit at the end here. And it's again, tunes in Tommy Dorsey getting sentimental over you. And he's like, hey, Vinny, come here, quick. You got to hear this, because it's actually playing. When the door opens, it's Vinny when she was younger, and she's got that huge smile on her face. And she goes, of course it is. this is, it's on every Thursday night. And she's smiling and like this giant grin on her face, and it pans over and we see Ed, and he's young Ed again.
He's moved his mustache from his upper lip to the top of his scalp.
That's right. He's got all the hair back. And he rushes over and professes his love for her, and they hug, and then that's the end.
Yeah. And you don't know what's what, really.
Yeah.
I like to think it's a happy ending.
Magic. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Sterling comes on and says, around and around she goes, and where she stops, nobody knows. All Ed Lindsay knows is that he desperately wanted a second chance, and finally got it through a strange and wonderful time machine called a radio in the Twilight Zone.
Be fun to update this where the guy's just watching old reruns of Beavis and Butthead instead. He won't leave his room.
And it's kids on VR instead.
Yeah. Kids on VR in the common room, just running into each other and shattering things.
You're melting your brains. And it's like, well, they actually are. Yeah. Well, but again, it's one of those, like, is that melting our brains, or is that just the new media? Because,
oh my God, it's deep. Behold Ed, a man who needed TP for his bunghole.
All right. Next week we have the prime mover.
Yeah. That's such an interesting expression. Yeah, we'll get into what that means in the Twilight Zone, I guess, next time.
I've never heard that phrase before this. So, looking forward to it.
It always sounds mathematical because of the word prime, but
right.
It's more than that. It's different. It's you look it up, you'll see. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Take care.